You're now listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.
Hello, Rockies. This is Sarah Jane Maroney, your host for Engage the Rockies, your go-to podcast concerning local and state issues for Colorado. Today, we are joined by Aaron Salt. Aaron Salt's passion for education began after meeting a teacher in rural Alabama. It was then he realized more work needs to be done to support teachers and challenge students to achieve and grow academically. Salt believes the public school system is the artery of our culture and that, quote, what and how our students are taught, end quote, will determine the direction of our country. An advocate for parent choice and strong academics, he was elected to the Academy District 20 Board of Education in 2021. Salt graduated from Auburn University with his undergraduate degree in psychology. He later earned a master's degree in social work from Florida State University. And years later, he moved to Colorado Springs before joining the D20 school board. He was founding member for a local charter school. There, he served as board chair until September of 2021, and he also serves on the PPLD library board. When he's not working, he enjoys packing up the whole family for a weekend to go camping. We welcome Aaron Salt. Today, Aaron Salt, the president of D20 School Board, is joining us. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me. And just as a quick aside, I'm not representing the district to the board by being here. This is just me. Thanks.
So, there's a lot to talk about here. There have been a couple of ballot measures. One of them was a mill levy override, and then there was a bond, and it seems as clear as mud. Could you help us through some of that?
Sure. So when you're looking as a public entity in Colorado, and you're looking at having some sort of a tax increase due to Tabor, there's really two methods that you can go through. One is an MLO, which is a mill levy override. Every taxing entity within where you live assesses some value or levy based off of your home value, and that's how we fund police departments, fire departments, roads, education, etc., libraries, among every other thing. And so water districts, there's so many different types of special taxing entities within the state of Colorado. Because of Tabor and the protections that it provides to us as taxpayers, the government entity can't just say, we're going to charge you more money now. We have to go to the voters and ask for them to override the existing mill levy that we as an entity are doing. Mill levy overrides typically, not exclusively, but typically they don't have a sunset. Once you approve it, it's in existence for as long as that entity is in place. So that's for the MLO side, and that's a perpetual increase year over year. With the bonds are a little bit different. Bond is basically going and taking a loan out and saying, hey, we're going to take out X number of dollars to accomplish a certain thing. The caveat here is that with bonds, it has to be related to a capital expense, capital improvement. So typically that's buildings for us as far as the school district goes. It's buildings, it's infrastructure, those types of hard costs. It's not just for normal operating expenses. It has to be for very specific things. The bond that we just did, we laid out exactly what it was in bond language. You're not obligated to do that, but for transparency's sake, that was something that we were really looking to do. We wanted to do it. We did it in 2016 before I was on the board. It passed, and we've accomplished almost everything that was on the ballot language up to this point. And so we have a really strong track record as the school district with our community as far as accomplishing the projects that we tell people we're going to accomplish and how we're responsible with their tax dollars.
And so that was what you said it happened in 2016. That was a bond as well?
Yeah, that was a bond. So we built several schools with that. So we had the Center for Modern Learning, which is out at Black Forest and Research. It has the Homeschool Academy. It has Village Middle School. It has the Challenger Learning Center and Legacy Peak Elementary. Encompass Heights was built with that. So we built several large buildings with that bond, in addition to a lot of smaller projects. So if anyone's driven up Powers, they've seen the new pool navatorium at Pine Creek. So that was another big initiative that went through with that 2016 bond. So what we just did was another bond initiative.
But how does that work? If you're doing a bond, that's essentially like a loan. How does the school district pay that back?
So that's why we have to go back to the taxpayers, because we are assessing an additional mill or additional levy on the taxpayers within the district to pay that loan back. And so The way it works is if we're taking out $100 million for whatever project, we get kind of what the interest rate's going to be and what our annual payment's going to be. And then we break that up based off of assessed values and levy a specific bond. And so anyone in District 20, when you get your property tax statement, you'll actually be able to see different levies that are assessed. It's not just school district. It is like your normal Academy 21. Then you'll have the 2016 bond and the 2024 bond levies that will all be listed on that tax property statement.
And this last bond, I read somewhere it was 83.14 million. That's a lot of dosh.
It is. And honestly, it's a fraction compared to what a lot of other districts are doing. It's a fraction of what we did in 2016. We had a very specific purpose with this particular bond. And so we wanted to make sure that it was covered, and we're not going over. We know. So back in 23, we had a ballot initiative for an MLO that did not pass. And so we were trying to be sensitive to the fact that our community, inflation has been, present. It has hurt a lot of people in our community. Everyone's feeling, go to the grocery store and you can feel kind of the squeeze there. And so we knew that we had to be strategic and explain why this is different and why, we're not just coming to the community asking for dollars. We have a specific purpose and intent behind what we're doing. And so one of the biggest selling points to me, I did not support the MLO back in 23. I was the only vote against the MLO from our board. So it still went for it anyways. In this one, I supported it because there were some very strategic reasons why. The first is that the federal government has a program that helps rebuild or renovate dilapidated or just bad conditioned buildings that are on military bases. It's called the Public Schools on Military Installation Program.
Why is that? I'm sorry. I just have to ask. What? It doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. I mean, I'm not a Colorado native, but why would you put a public school on a military base? I'm curious.
So for us, we're Academy District 20. We have the Air Force Academy that sits on the property. Actually, that was the first school in the district was on the Academy. I can't go back and tell you all of the rationale, but I know we're not unique in this. There's hundreds of them across the country. And even in our local area, we have two as Academy 20, but Fountain Fort Carson has them down as well, down at the Fort Carson. So it's not unique, but it isn't prevalent,
Sure.
but it happens, right? So
but that's how you're able to focus on this particular grant.
Correct. So we have two schools. We have an elementary school and we have a high school that both sit on the Air Force Academy base. Both of them those two buildings are the two oldest buildings in our district. And so just out of sheer need and, time, they need to be updated. They need to be renovated. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Unfortunately, the renovations are going to be excessive. And so we're actually going to be rebuilding each of those. This particular program is a match grant from the federal government. So the federal government provides 80%, and we as the district only have to come up with 20%. So
83.14 million is 20%?
No. Only 49 million of that is going to rebuild Air Academy High School. The elementary school, Doug Valley, we can handle on our own. It's our portions able to be accomplished within our normal savings budget. We've been able to sock away some money over the last year and a half to really put our forward. And so this bond only was covering the Air Academy rebuild. And I'll talk about what those other pieces are first. I want to talk a little bit about the expense of building a high school because it shocked me a little bit. When you're talking $50 million is 20%. It's a little bit outrageous, especially for what we built here. And to talk a little bit about how that cost is inflated over the last 20 years, I was talking to a previous board member back in August of, 24, because now we're in 2025. I was talking to him in August of last year, and he said Discovery Canyon campus, which is on the north side of the Springs, is a PK-12 campus, one building. You can walk from the kinder side up to the high school, never even walk outside, like one big building. When they built that PK-12 campus back in the early 2000s, the entire cost was about $75-80 million. And so now we're talking about strictly building a high school, and that cost alone is going to be close to $250 million. So that's just the way that these construction costs have inflated and what it takes to build today versus, 20 years ago. And so that tries to help put some of that in context. So that was one of my first thoughts was $250 million to build this high school.
Right.
But that's kind of where we are. Part of that rebuild, and one of the things that I'm excited about, is we're actually going to be able to put in a new career and technical education, or CTE center. Our district is working across the entire district and our high schools to create career pathways. And so a kid can come in and sort of say, I want to do this thing. And then we have sort of the CTE education to help build them. Every high school will have one, at least one. By the end of next year, I believe all of them will have a program in place. Liberty is sort of our big CTE flagship high school right now. They've got an auto industry certificate. The kids are getting certified. They're getting hired on while they're still in high school at some of the big major dealerships. A couple of them have gone on to national training schools that are fairly elite because of the level of training and quality that program's putting out. We've got EMT. We've got some RN basics that are going through at Liberty, as well as some other sort of design pieces as well. This is going to have, one of the ones I'm excited about is an aviation track. And so kids who are looking to get into aviation industry, because we're partnering with the Air Force Academy, will be able to work towards those industry certifications even in high school.
Nice. And that is all going to happen after this renovation. So you said, is the whole building going to be torn down and rebuilt, or how is this going to work?
Yeah. So with Doug Valley, we have enough property to build the new building and then move everyone into the new building and then demolish the old building and then, focus it on some outdoor spaces, bus parking, playgrounds, etc. We believe we have enough space at Air Academy to do the same. And so we would build the new building kind of at the adjacent property. So we're not having to bring in portables or anything else, relocate those students during the construction process. It'll be several years before this actually gets built and kind of can be utilized. So we're hoping that we'll be able to build it kind of at the adjacent property while the existing building is in place, move everyone over all the programming to the new building, and then take care of the old building and repurpose that area.
Wow. And so was this a contentious vote? You talked about the mill levy override that you voted against. Was the whole entire board in favor of the bond?
From the bond, yes. Well, it was unanimous support from our board. It was unanimous support from our administration. And frankly, when you look at the way the vote went in November, it was overwhelming support from our community as well, which we were extremely grateful for. This is going to mean huge impact for our students. And I say students across the district because we'll provide transportation for any of our high school students if they're looking to take those CTE programming or take part in that CTE programming at Air Academy. We'll make sure that they have opportunity to get there. So it's not just segmenting this for one portion of our district. This will actually impact all of our high school students and provide opportunity for them.
So if someone went to Pine Creek, but they wanted to take one of these classes at Air Academy, they would be easily bused from one to the other.
Specifically in those career pathways, yes.
Okay. And so but you said it's 83.14 million and 49 of that is going to the Doug Valley and to Air Academy. There's others though as well, isn't there?
Yeah. So we had just over 11 million that went to our charter schools for them to do some improvements. They told us what they were looking to do, and they were great projects. Specifically, I can talk a little bit about Classical Academy. I walked the space with their executive team kind of before in the process of the bond vote. And they have effectively an elementary sized gym that they use as a gym, as they use for recess, they use as an auditorium, they use as a cafeteria. And so they kind of have to rework that space every day, 2-3 times a day, depending on what's going on in there to make sure that everyone can meet it, to meet all their students. So part of these funds will go to build an actual, gym that will fit their needs, and then they'll be able to repurpose the old one, and so that they can actually have the space they need for the students that they have there. This is at their East Campus by Pikes Peak State College. And then in addition, they're building some additional office space. They still have office members who work in their office at that campus that are out in portables out in the parking lot. And so this will bring everybody inside into the secured building. And so this will provide a lot of safety for their staff as well. So I know they were very excited about being able to take part in these bond dollars and what it'll mean for their community. In addition go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, how is that different? We interviewed Christy Burton Brown, who has just won a seat on the State Board of Education, and she was explaining that, hey, a charter school is a public school. So how does that work for the D20 school district figuring out which projects and helping charter schools? Did the charter school raise their hand and say, hey, can we have some money? How did that work?
Yeah, great question. So we have a great partnership with our charter schools. Not every district in the state has a strong relationship with their charters, but we do. We have a history of supporting the charter schools and giving them a fair share. Per state statute, MLO dollars are obligated to go per student distribution to charter schools. So if they have 10% of your students are in charter schools, they get 10% of any MLO dollars. Bond dollars are not obligated in that same fashion, but it was important for us with the relationships that we have that we maintained that. They were the charter schools that were there, which was just TCA back in 2016. They got not exact, but they got a fair share of the 2016 dollars for their improvements based off of their student account. And so this was roughly based off of student count as well to the charter schools. And so it was something that it was important to the district and our board and our admin team to make sure that they were included, they were partnered in this whole process. And with that, we had another close to $25 million that went to other improvements across the district. Every school was given something in this. Well, there were a couple schools that said, we're good, we don't need anything, you can send our dollars to a different school. So there were a couple that didn't get anything new out of this. They've gotten some capital improvements recently, but every other school did. And some of them were fairly significant. One school, it is going to be the oldest school once we rebuild Doug Valley and Air Academy. It's Challenger Middle School. So it's the third oldest building currently. And they were about $1.5 million, or maybe a little bit more, just for their school and some improvements that they needed to get done, including revision of a library and some space to do some esports and set up new kind of extracurricular programming for their students as well.
So you've been on the board, the D20 school board, since November of 2021. So as a little boy, did you always want to be president of the school board?
I didn't even know there was a president or a school board to hold that position when I was a little kid. This was just something that I grew into as I moved through my life. So
okay, well,
education has always been a passion for me, and
okay.
So having the opportunity to help with the charter school just fell in line with sort of this mission that I have for education and making sure that I believe in agency and that everyone kind of can help self-determination, choose their own path, and they can go down it. Education is a huge part of that. And so between the charter school and the district board, everything has kind of fallen right in line for me. And so even though I didn't know this was a thing when I was a kid, I really like doing it. I'm really glad to be here.
Wonderful. What would you know that the city council elections, you can go down, track yourself down and pick up a packet and run for city council. Obviously, the D20, the school board, that is an elected position. So you had to put signs with your name on it and raise funds. How was that?
A little uncomfortable. I don't love asking people for money, but you have to be able to do it in order to get the money to run a campaign, get the signs out. The flip side of that is when people relate to what you're trying to say, a lot of them just wanted to give you, say, hey, I'll give you, $20, $50, $100. Just when you're talking through, you have to get comfortable with the ask. But a lot of times when you have the right message, the ask is a lot easier because people are just kind of interested and willing to help people that they see as strong, value-centered individuals.
Yeah. So if you were going to encourage someone to run for, obviously school board isn't up in April, that's just the city council. So it'll be a little bit longer before we have more elections for D20. But if someone was interested in sort of dabbling and kind of dipping a toe into this world, what would you say to encourage them?
So I think it's really important to understand what the actual role of governance means, what it means to be part of a government entity. There's a lot of restrictions that people don't realize you have as an elected official when it comes to sunshine laws and open records.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah.
The sunshine laws?
And pretty much every state has something similar to this. We have the sunshine laws here that really relate to open meetings and making sure that any decisions that are made by a public entity are done in open and public view because they are elected officials, they are public servants. And so we as the community have the right to be privy to the decisions that are being made that impact us. This goes really deep into how you can email other people on your board. It could be considered a public meeting that wasn't properly noticed. If you're having a big email conversation between you and other members of your board, same thing can go for text messages.
Although haven't some of those laws recently changed in Colorado specifically? I don't know. I remember hearing something about that.
There were some modifications to the Open Records Act, specifically as it related to the state legislature, where they were exempting themselves out of having that public transparency piece, but they still maintained it for all of the others. So all of your local officials still have to operate under that.
Interesting. Okay.
And so that's what I would say is understand kind of what it means to be part of the government, what those restrictions are, understand what, I would go back and read through the rights that are given to individuals through the Constitution. We have both the state and the federal Constitution. Understand what that means and what rights individuals actually have and what your role as a government entity actually means, because we're here as a means to support and protect the private property of all the citizens that are here, and taking away the tax dollars through fees or however else they want to bill it up at the state legislature, that's on them. But understand what your role is as far as protecting individual rights, protecting private property. It's really important. And then just understand what it is that you're doing. I have people who I've spoken to that were really interested in doing the county commission thing, and they sat in a couple meetings and said, I don't care about any of this stuff that they're talking about. It's like, then I would not recommend going and being a county commissioner, because this is what you do all the time. I've talked to people who really thought school board be kind of a cool thing. And then once they sat in a couple of meetings, like, this has nothing. It's like, this is a governance role. This is not an education role. Like, there's a big difference between what I do and what our teachers do. We all work together. We're all on the same team, but how those team members function are very different. Think about it like a football team, right? Like, your quarterback, he's got a totally different job than what the O lineman does. Like the D lineman, your DB, like, there's so many different positions and everyone has a job that they have to do. And they work together to accomplish the goal, but what their roles, what their responsibilities are extremely different. So understand what your role actually is going to be when you're stepping into that.
So a final question then regarding that. You've been on the school board for a few years now, and you're now board president. What would you say is your biggest accomplishment? Obviously, it's not a one-person sport. It's a team sport. It's an effort. But what would you say is that you're most thrilled that has happened or occurred or is going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's something that we don't talk a lot about. It doesn't get a lot of public air, which is understandable because it's not sexy, it's not cool. But what we've done is we brought in a superintendent that has done an amazing job focusing on instruction. As an educational entity, that's our job. Our goal is to educate students, that they become productive citizens in our community, in our state, in our country. That goes all the way back to classroom instruction and a teacher standing in front of the class, and how do they provide information in a way that the students are able to understand it, digest it. How do we know that they're understanding and digesting that? And so our superintendent has done some really incredible work about reinforcing instruction, coaching on instruction, and making sure that we are focused on the academic side of the house. And I think that's one of the things that I'm the most proud of, is really making sure that our district is focused on the right things.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Well, Aaron, maybe we'll have you back again to talk about some of those library issues.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast that we can get into that.
Probably is. Well, we appreciate your time and help. Thanks for explaining all this. It is it's a lot clearer now.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.